Good afternoon, everyone. Bongani and Zweli, let me just thank you for just a moment of levity as you made your very heartfelt delivery. But also Sakina, for your tender steering of this event, your composure, even as I know that there's turmoil inside your own heart. I think I want to highlight that because it reminds me that perhaps at these moments of such unspeakable grief, the right thing to do is to be with people who love the person that you are mourning. Because in the last 2 hours, I have felt edified. I have felt that in our collective grief, I am also seen and I'm with you. And perhaps the last week of isolation was necessary to be in silence, to be reflective. But this too has been healing to be with all of you. So thank you. There are moments when silence is the best language, when no words or superlatives can describe the turmoil within. This is that moment for me. I am completely unmoved by Eusebius' passing. We've all lost people. It's not the first time that we have gathered at events like these, but it hits differently. And it is one of those moments where I wake up in the middle of the night and I think, what am I going to do? But I know I'm not the only one. And I know that in this front row, what I feel is magnified and felt 100 times as much. I had planned to share some special moments of our friendship, but have now decided in a moment of fragility that going down that route would just be opening an avenue to the most chaotic descent into grief. So I will just say a few safe things. The first thing that I want to say was that Eusebius built friendships that were rooted in respect. He didn't respect our bullshit. No. He respected our agency as people in his life. That when there are conversations that required his counsel, he was there with it, but ultimately he trusted that you are your own person, you've got agency, and you can make your own decisions. And I think that is important. The second thing I want to say is that he loved loudly and emphatically and not waiting for another day to express the depth of his love. And that has been a source of comfort, that I know he knew that I adored him, and I know that he loved me. And I laughed as I replayed some of the conversations that would start with, you know, the thing I love about you. How do you start a conversation like that with somebody who is a close friend and you speak so regularly? So there'll be that whole preamble about what he loved about me. And I know that he did exactly the same thing to you. A couple of years ago, he came up with an idea about a book on friendship. And I said, come on, man, you're becoming soft. This tough political animal, why are we talking about friendship? He says, just hold on. A really deep, clinical look at what it means to gravitate towards certain people and how you hold each other or don't hold each other in moments where there is a divergence in beliefs, in ideology, in moral standing. And I think that he was thinking about it precisely because of what some of you have said, that he lived a life where some friendships ended. They ended. And we ought to be comfortable with the severing of ties when what is at stake is our humanity. And we were thinking about that, but we hadn't spoken about that project in a long time because he was so supremely talented that there was a lot that he was working on at the very same time. The last thing I want to say about the friendship is exactly what you guys have said. He was the fucking gossip. Now, hold on. I say this with no judgment because I'm a fucking gossip. But here's the thing. He's gossiped about every single one of us. And you know you've gossiped about him. But the gossip also had respect, because he would articulate the person's strong points while gossiping about you. And there were some friendships that I had with people he couldn't stand. And he had friendships with people I have no opinion. And then he would call and ask for coffee. I said, no, I'm meeting that person. You and that chummy of yours, bye-bye. But he understood that we have attributes that attract us to certain people and attributes that repel us from certain people. But even in that space, we can come together in a place of love and tenderness. About the gossip, it was not gossip that was meant to destroy. And I know that from personal experience. Eusebius has sat through many gossip sessions about me, which he probably led at some point. But he never came back to me, at least, and said, this one says this about you. Never. It was just a given that he's got his space that has nothing to do with me, where they dissect me, and I have my space that has nothing to do with him, where I dissect him. But this particular time, about 2 years ago, and it's important you know this, so that you don't walk out of here saying Eusebius was a gossip, full stop. There's more. There was a particular environment that he felt was not good for me, and in our conversations after I'd made a decision to leave that space, he said, I've come to make sure, we met at Just Him, that you don't have second thoughts. You need to get out of that space. And he teared up, actually. He said, Eusebius, stop being so soft. Are you really going to fall apart because there's some gossip? And he said, it's not just gossip. It's a vile environment that is not good for you. No sooner have you left the door, and this is what happens. Get out of there. Because he made a distinction between harmless commentary and commentary that was meant to annihilate someone's character. And he was that kind of friend who pitched and said, get the hell out of there. And I'm grateful for that. That's the friendship. Perhaps there's a reason why this grief feels so intractable and insurmountable. And the reason, I think, is not just the personal loss. It's not just losing someone whose life, whose very presence was a reflection of the story of my life. And so with his physical, shall I say, evacuation from this earth, it feels to me that pieces of my chapter are just falling apart. I think the reason some of us feel that way is because we recognize that even as some found his opinions intolerable for whatever reason, or described him as arrogant, he also said that about himself, so really not breaking news there, is that even in that contestation, his detractors recognize his genius. His detractors know that he was a necessary force in our society. And if we are to think about that interface of journalism and democracy, we cannot deny the fact that Eusebius's voice was so pivotal to our democratic edifice. And it is not hyperbole to liken Eusebius's commentary, Eusebius's voice, to a light that shines in the darkness. He was an intellectual lodestar, as so many of you have said. But here's what I want you to think about. You don't have to agree with it. Is that our talent gives us some foundations. Our passion informs the choices that we make. But it's not enough. And Eusebius believed it's not enough. Often when he gossiped, he would say, that one is bright, but he doesn't do the work. So what does that mean? It means we are duty-bound if we think we have something to share with the world. We are duty-bound to do the work. Not to arrive at agreement, but to at least show some fidelity to inquiry, to facts, to truth, to contestation, to other points of view, so that when we arrive at a particular point, we have done the work. He had huge respect for that effort. And so it problematizes the accusation that he was arrogant, because if he were arrogant, I think he'd just wake up in the morning and do the brilliant thing that he did, that Makudu and Vukani have spoken about. He could have just done it. And he probably would have produced brilliant podcasts without lifting a finger. But to be so supremely talented and still take the time to do the work shows respect for us as his audience. And it is a lesson for those of us who still believe we have something to contribute in our life as journalists. Just because I think it's not enough. Let me do the work that feeds or contradicts or shapes this thing that I believe. On the professional side, what set Eusebius apart? If this room is full of talented people, then why is it that he stood apart and was almost peerless? I think it is also because he took a stand. He took a stand. Journalists get accused all the time of having an agenda. I actually think you should have an agenda. Eusebius had an agenda. He had an agenda. We can debate that another day. But here's the thing. When we live in such a fragmented society, a polarized society, where children are dying from cholera 30 years, almost 30 years into democracy, can journalism afford the luxury of detachment? Those of you who've put a foot in Western newsrooms and they debate impartiality, perhaps they can afford to insist that their journalists are impartial. I don't know. I don't know that in this space, where the very notion of truth is now up for grabs, in this space where everything that's true is called fake news, just to create confusion and to make the truth indistinguishable from the lies, create a state of paralysis where nobody does anything, nobody says anything, nobody writes anything, because everyone is lying, allegedly. When you come from societies such as ours, where people are hanging by a thread, where our democracy is on a precarious balance, where the bad threatens to overwhelm the good, where toxic power relations from a gender point of view, from an income point of view, race, all of that, where these determine whether people get to eat, whether people get to sleep at night. Eusebius had an agenda, and I say that without any fear of contradiction. He had an agenda. His agenda was to speak up for the underdog. His agenda was to amplify his voice against bigotry. His agenda was to put himself between that fatal strike of power and corruption. He put himself between the protagonists and those who would be victims of such a strike. That was his agenda. And his agenda was a South Africa that was progressive, that was thriving, and that was delivering for people, and that was a home to all of us. That's what Eusebius's agenda was. I would never diminish Eusebius's stature by engaging with anti-vax trolls. He would say, don't feed the trolls, Tommy. Ooh, Jesu Mnyama. Where did he learn that thing? And Nduduzo, you've got a lot to answer for. Everything Jesu Mnyama. Now listen to me very carefully. I say this with all the sagacity I can muster. I am not speaking to anti-vaxxers. There's no point. I am talking to people who hung on Eusebius's every word. Those Uber drivers, those here amongst us who listened to Eusebius's take on issues before we formulated our own positions. Those people who were hesitant and scared, because we are allowed to be scared. Those people who thought, I want to take the vaccine, but I'm scared. And they listened to Eusebius and they saw him take the jab, and they went out to get it. I'm talking to you because you may be feeling a little tender this afternoon. Eusebius was diagnosed with epilepsy in 2008. 2008. When we say he died suddenly, there's a context. It means he was fine that morning. He went about his business. He was tweeting, he was talking, he was working. That event that has created this tectonic shifts in our lives, that was sudden. But he has been living with epilepsy since 2008. There were moments of hospitalization that he didn't share. Nduduzo stepped up to the plate and just handled it all with so much grace and generosity. But Eusebius too, he was stoic in those moments. He took them all with equanimity. Just because he didn't tweet, I'm in hospital, just because he didn't tweet about it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's important you know this. He bore this illness with courage and fortitude, but he kept it away from you because he wanted you to treat him as an equal, to come to him with all that robust energy and engage him without feeling sorry for him. He had epilepsy since 2008. He had been hospitalized before, but none of us thought there will be that one moment where it becomes fatal. It wasn't the vaccine. So take heart, take courage, and face life with grace and dignity. Lastly, Eusebius had this funny relationship with this journalist whom I think many of us admire. She always invited him to her show where there was something around South Africa, race and identity. And I would tell him that she's such a fan. And would say, I told you, you lie, I'm the fan. And that's what I mean, that he did have humility. This arrogance that people are talking about, well, he could not imagine that that person was a fan of his. So no, it's just professional respect and they need to fill up the show. But Yubi, I've never won an argument against you. I am so proud to tell you I told you so. Because this person sent me an email. Hi Redi, thank you for sharing this news. I was a huge fan of Eusebius. Yubi, she was a huge fan. Says, I'm indeed shocked and deeply saddened. Eusebius was one of a kind, always a great guest, often counterintuitive, and constantly with the people of South Africa's best interests at heart. I send you my deepest condolences and sympathies on the loss of your friend, and please pass my sympathies to his family. May Eusebius rest in peace. I will miss him. That's from Cristiano. Yubi, go well, my brother, my friend, gossiper in chief. The one who opened his big arms and ample shoulders to hold me, to gather me, to celebrate me. When I come up for air, I will have the grace to feel blessed that life had chosen me and your friends to call you a friend. It is not a gift that I will take for granted. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I thank the family for sharing him with us. For whatever it is you instilled in him, this country, this world has been so enriched by his presence here. Nduduzo, he worried about you. He worried about these episodes when he landed in hospital. And we spoke about how that is how you do love. That love has messy chapters, and for him the health part was the messy chapter. What an incredible, incredible achievement to love so cleanly, so perfectly, so effortlessly. How you rose to the occasion at the most challenging moments. But here's where I think, when you think back on your life with Eusebius, that you pat yourself on the shoulder because you found that tenderness. You made him want to wake up in the morning. You made him want to celebrate life. And he walked with his shoulders a little high and his head held a little high because of you. So thank you.